The Alamo is the most famous landmark in San Antonio, Texas. It is also reported to be one of the most haunted. The history of this location is dark and extremely bloody. One of the most violent battles in Texas history was fought on what is now hallowed ground. To understand the Alamo and its haunted history, we must start in the early 1700s when the Spanish colonized the San Antonio area. At this time in Spanish history, the Spanish crown was hell-bent on spreading the tendrils of Catholicism around the world. With this political tactic from the Spanish throne in mind, 4 missions were constructed by the Franciscan priesthood across San Antonio from the years 1718 to 1797. This includes the Alamo, which was established in 1718. The end goal? Forcefully enslave and convert the local Native American population to Catholicism. Those who conformed were housed, educated, and led to live proper lives of modern Spaniards. Those who refused were exiled or worse, killed in the name of heresy towards the crown. Over the next 13 years, the history of New Spain would not play out as smoothly as the crown once thought. Feelings of tyranny, religious, racial, and cultural tensions, coupled with poor economic stability, would push these New Spain citizens towards revolution. On September 16th of 1810, the Mexican War of Independence officially began, led by Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla, who is considered by many to be the father of Mexican independence. This armed conflict, comprised of multiple local and regional struggles, would continue for 11 years before coming to an end on August 24th of 1821, with the signing of the Treaty of Cordoba, forever ending New Spain's dependence on Old Spain. Shortly after establishing their independence, now Mexican forces would occupy the Alamo, where Spanish troops once quartered. Throughout the 1820s, thousands of Americans and Mexicans would settle inside the San Antonio area, causing numerous rebellions to rise throughout the city, causing the balance of power between America and Mexico to hang by a thread. During this turbulent period of San Antonio history, the United States declared Texas as a department under its governmental oversight in 1826. John Quincy Adams, who was president at the time, offered Mexico's government $1 million to purchase the land, which was in turn denied by Mexican officials. Over the next 4 years, 30,000 Anglos would arrive in Texas, and a new $5 million offer would be made by President Adams to purchase the land. This was again declined and was coupled with a ban of immigrants from the United States that would last until 1833. In 1835, following rebellions all throughout Texas, Martin Perfecto de Cos, a Mexican army general and Santa Anna's brother-in-law, who was sent to establish a military headquarters in San Antonio. His mission? Expel all settlers who arrived after the year 1830. Try as he may, the Texan population would not go quietly. A group of Texas patriots led by Ben Milam and Edward Burleson resisted Mexican forces and handed them their defeat during the Siege of Bear in December of 1835. From that point, San Antonio and the Alamo would become the centerpiece of the Texan rebellion against Santa Anna and his army. After hearing of his defeat, Santa Anna ordered an army numbered 6,000 strong that included 2 mortar pieces and 6 pieces of artillery to march on San Antonio to reclaim the Alamo and achieve what his general could not. Unbeknownst to him, there were 189 armed men with muskets and 18 or more pieces of artillery waiting to fight to the death in the name of liberty. Amongst those 189 men were now famous names such as David Crockett, Jim Bowie, William Travis, J.B. Bonham, and Colonel Seguin, who was a Mexican separatist who hated the cruelty of Santa Anna. According to Texas history in an archived book called Texas History Stories: The Alamo, at sunrise on the 22nd of February 1836, signaled by a Patriot lookout in the tower of the San Fernando Cathedral, Colonel William B. Travis of the Texas Army recalled seeing, quote, soldiers of Santa Ana pouring over the hills to the west of the city. On they came by hundreds and thousands, led by General Santa Ana himself on a beautiful milk-white horse. It was at this time that Colonel Travis ordered his men into the Alamo to prepare for battle. Later that evening, Santa Ana sent a messenger to the gates of the Alamo and demanded a surrender. The only answer he received was that of a roaring cannon. The battle had officially begun. For 13 days, the brave Texas patriots fended off the vicious Mexican assault, driving them back repeatedly. On March 5, 1863, the tide of the battle would turn in the favor of the Mexicans. According to Texas History Stories, the Alamo, it reads, quote, early that morning, a party of the enemy planted a cannon close to the fort and began firing. A ball struck the wall near where Colonel Crockett was sleeping. He sprang up and ran out on the roof. He saw a gunner with a lighted match in his hand just ready to fire another shot. Crockett raised his rifle to his shoulder and fired. The gunner fell dead. Another Mexican snatched the match and was preparing to touch off the cannon when he was stretched on the earth beside the first. A third, a fourth, and a fifth seized the match, but all met the same fate. End quote. Knowing that the fort was soon to fall, Colonel Travis rallied his men inside of the fort and gave a short but famous speech. It was stated that death was staring them all in the face and that anyone who wished might leave the fort. For himself, he meant to stay and die fighting for his country. It was at this point where he drew his sword and drew a line on the ground. Those who were willing to stay with him were to cross the line and die fighting. Every able-bodied man, wounded or sick, made their way across the line but one. Finally, on March 6, 1836, Santa Ana and his forces would deal the final blow to the defenders of the Alamo. As stated in Texas History Stories, the Alamo, quote, on Sunday morning, March 6th, the whole Mexican army, 6,000 strong, surrounded the Alamo. Santa Ana made up his mind to capture the place, cost what it might. He divided his troops into 4 columns and put horsemen behind them to prick them on if they should wish to turn back. The troops carried ladders to climb upon the walls and axes and crowbars to batter them down. Soon after midnight, the bugles sounded and the whole line moved at double quick upon the fort. End quote. Despite the massive engagement by the Mexican army, the Texans were ready. They mowed them down in droves as they ascended the walls. This soon led to a hasty retreat by the Mexicans, but was revived again by another bugle call shortly after. This time, it is said that the Mexican soldiers fell over the wall like sheep in storm inside the Alamo. After the gun smoke settled, what remained was nothing short of a nightmare. A mountain of twisted limbs and bloodied corpses stacked the grounds of the Alamo. Approximately 1,600 men lay dead after the battle. At this time in American history, it was one of the bloodiest battles ever fought in such a short time. It was reported that all of these bodies were either burned, dumped into mass graves, or thrown into the San Antonio River. With all this slaughter and the lack of proper burial for the deceased, a strong case is constructed for a prevalent haunting. To this day, it is said that the spirits of the Alamo defenders and Mexican soldiers can be seen throughout the grounds. These hauntings are even recorded as far back as 1846, 10 years after the infamous Battle of the Alamo. This is also the year that the United States converted the Alamo into a complex for the United States Army. It is said that the Army had plans to demolish part of the old church and leave only the old barracks and more recently constructed Alamo Church. According to a San Antonio newspaper blurb, once talks of the deconstruction began, locals and soldiers began seeing spirits wandering the grounds of the Alamo. Soon after, talks of the deconstruction ceased. To this day, visitors from all around the world claim to see phantom soldiers and monks, light anomalies and shadow figures wandering the grounds of the Alamo. It should also be noted that prior to the Alamo's construction, the grounds where the Alamo now lies were used as a Catholic burial site and housed the remains of 1,000 plus bodies of Canary Islanders, Spanish settlers, and indigenous peoples. The first human bone fragments would be unearthed preparing for a multi-million-dollar restoration of the Alamo in 2019. This massive construction project began in September of 2022 and has since unearthed even more human remains. With all of this dark and bloody history partnered with the unearthing and disturbing of human remains, no wonder the Alamo is a hotbed for paranormal activity. Would you spend a night alone at the Alamo? Let me know in the comments below.